And if it's going to come to him avoiding jail time, now that this indictment exists, he's either going to have to win in court. Defending yourself against these charges by saying, yes, I did it, is not a great defense. And so how else can you avoid jail time? Well, you can plead in exchange for lenience. And we've seen lots of people, including Reality Winner, a very high profile case, plead in exchange for lenience and still get jail time. What can he offer prosecutors other than his confession, his cooperation? I mean, this is a crime he could only commit because he was in high public office. Spiro Agnew used that as a get out of jail free card. It was not just that he was vice president. It was that prosecutors assumed he was about to become president because Nixon was teetering. They were right. And in order to keep Agnew out, they traded him essentially jail time for his resignation. I'm not saying that's what the DOJ should agree to. I'm not saying that's what Trump should try for, or that his defense should offer it. I'm not even saying it would be good or bad for the country. I'm just saying the one other time we've dealt with this as a country, that's how we did it.
There you have another fascinating admission right from Rachel Maddow. I'll tell you, she does get real news, just not the way she thinks. But so here it is, then this is what it's all about. And of course, we all knew this, right? That this is really what it's all about. You go, look, Donald Trump's only got one thing that he can deal, and that's that he won't run. That's it. That's what they want. Now, they can't legally enforce that, but they could accept that as a deal in exchange for no prison time.
That shouldn't actually be a deal. Usually when you cut a deal, it's, hey, I'm going to give up other people that committed a crime. I'm going to stop doing a crime. I'm actually going to repay what I stole. I'm going to give you information about other people.
I'll tell you where I have money stashed away, where I have drugs stashed away. I'm going to give you something where you can argue at least, oh, you're taking more drugs off the street. You're getting more criminals off the street. You're doing something. Why would the prosecutors even want that from him? But then again, the answer kind of tells you what it is. It's that, yes, that's actually what they want. And that's what this has all been about. But that shouldn't
be on the table as the fact that that's on the table as bargaining leverage just shows the fact that this is a corrupt system that just doesn't want him to run for president. That shouldn't be like, it's one thing, like if you do fraud in a particular industry, sometimes they'll bar, like they want an admission, you won't go to jail, and you're barred from continuing to work in that industry. Maybe that doesn't even exist. I might just be getting that from the movie Tin Man when the guy loses his license. Great movie. But I feel like that's a thing where you get barred like from your license because they don't want you to do more harm in the field.
Right.
In this instance, there was no harm.
Not in the field. The harm was
while he was president. There were no issues there. And guess what? Even when he left with the information, no one's claiming that he leaked the information or did any damages. They're just saying that he wasn't compliant.
Yes, there doesn't even seem to be a complaint that it was a problem that he left with it. They're just saying that when we asked for it back, he didn't give it back fast enough. That's essentially what this all relies on.
I'm classifying it that way because one of the major distinctions between the fact that they let both Joe Biden off the hook and that they let Mike Pence off the hook was that upon requesting the documents, they were returned to them. And you accurately pointed out, which I hadn't even thought about, was that the vice presidents and senators aren't even allowed to keep the information. Only the president would have the power to declassify it. But the point is, so if the only distinction is that they were compliant, then the real crime you're saying here is non-compliance. It's not leaving with documents because you're not prosecuting people for leaving with documents.
And as Brian just correctly noted, what a lot of people are saying is like, oh, well, he could have sold them or he could have done this. He could have given them out to other people. But that doesn't really deal with Rob's central point here, which is that, but he always could have. That was true when he was president, too. He could have sold them. He could have given them away. He could. But all of a sudden now, because he's ex-president, this becomes some type of threat or danger. It just doesn't make any sense. But so here you have on Rachel Maddow's show, right? Like the same woman who just 6 years ago had the most powerful senator in the United States tell her that the intelligence community is going to get this guy, is now going, oh, okay, and we got him for a charge where we never charge any of these other people for this exact same crime. And by the way, the deal should be that he can't run for president again. Like, they're so blinded by their hatred of Donald Trump and their belief that if they just get Donald Trump, then they get rid of the entire problem. The entire problem being that more and more, well over half of the people in this country hate your fucking guts and don't trust you. And way more than that are just never interested in listening to you. They think that problem goes away when they get Donald Trump. And so they're so blinded by that they really don't even think about the implications of what they're saying. And like how like profound an admission all of this is. Oh, so that's what it's about. Making sure he's not president again.
I also hate their categorization of what the Trump defense is, that they both just laugh, oh, so he's going to show up in court and say, yeah, I did it. Well, yeah, he's going to say, yeah, I did it, and I'm allowed to do it because they have the Presidential Records Act, and when Bill Clinton left with tapes, he just left with them. They tried to collect them, and a ruling was made that a president has the sole authority of deciding what's his personal materials, and the state doesn't then want to have to sift through it and make a determination. I mean, that was the prior ruling, and what he's actually getting seemingly penalized for is the Treason Act of whatever. I just did an episode of Run Your Mouth with Gary Richide, who's a historian, said that goes back like 100 years, and literally it seems to me like any government action would be in violation of that technical law. That seems to almost be the fail-safe law in the books, that if you wanted to prosecute someone for being against the deep state, that's your fail-safe. Because any conversation you have with a foreign power about anything that you're doing in office would seemingly be in violation of that law. So literally every action that a president ever does, or anyone seemingly when talking to another country, would be in violation of the technical way that of law. And so the fact that you haven't seen a lot more people being prosecuted by it, it seems like that is the law, the fail-safe on the books, that if you want to find someone guilty of something, oh, well, then we got this treason law.
This is the way government works in general, and the way out of control governments work. There was a book about this. I can't remember. I read this. It was like 15 years ago or something like that. There was a book about like I think it concluded that the average American commits, I can't remember, it was like 4 or 6 felonies a day. Like if you actually look at all the laws on the book, we're like always all committing. You can't exist and operate in this world without breaking some type of laws. And this is true from the federal government all the way down to local governments. Like I remember I was joking around about this when I did I had a stand-up show 2 years ago at Freedom Fest, and they did it in South Dakota because it was like the only state that had no COVID restrictions. There was never any mandates or lockdowns in South Dakota. And I was there, and there was like a bar.
It's impossible to not socially distance there. There's
they're like, we're doing anyways. It. We've been doing it forever. So we're fine. But so we're at this bar where like the stand-up comedy show was, and it's like it was an all beer bar. And then they were like, oh, like next door is a whiskey bar. If you want to grab a whiskey, you can go over there. So I go next door and I grab a whiskey. And then as I was walking back, and I'm not even like in the thing, I was just going into the green room, and they were like, yep, that's it. 3 felonies a day. That's the book right there. Thank you. Dershowitz, I believe, wrote it. Okay. So anyway, so I'm going back to back into the green room, not even out into like the club. I was going back into the green room, and the bouncer from the bar was like, oh, you can't bring the whiskey back there. Like you have to finish it here. And I was like, this is the freest state in the country. And this is what I got. Like, there's just, this, like, if you ever see, and I've been at businesses at comedy clubs in the city before, when like the inspectors come from the city, and when they come to inspect you, every single restaurant, club, everything is guilty of 1 million infractions. It's just the guy chooses how much of it we want to enforce today. And whether that guy had a good day or a bad day determines whether you owe $2,000 or $30,000. Just that's it. There's no business. They have like these things where like they'll go in the basement and find, like, if they find mouse droppings or something like that, then that's a fine. And you're like, it's a basement in New York City. There's not one that exists where you can't find something. You know what I mean? Like it's anyway. So this is kind of the way this works. You have laws on top of laws on top of laws, regulations on top of regulations on top of regulations, and then for the most part, they're not enforced because none of us could literally move from point A to point B if they were. But anytime they decide they feel like enforcing one of them, they can. And this is where you get kind of this anarcho-tyranny, where you have this kind of this system where at certain times it's not enforced at all, and then at other times it can be enforced. And then whoever is wielding the power gets to decide when to enforce it. And so, as we've said about this with Donald Trump before, it's like every single president of my lifetime could very easily be tried and convicted and sentenced to life in prison at a maximum security prison without the possibility of parole at best. You know, very easily. All it would take is the political will. If right now the powers that be decided, you know what, we want to come after George W. Bush, it would be incredibly easy to go after him for a litany of crimes that he committed. Same with Obama, same with Bill Clinton, same with any president.